Hey, this is C&D Channel. I'm Chris. This is MMA for you. I'm going to be doing my post-fight analysis for UFC 189. Overall, the main card, including Brown versus Means and Smolka versus Siri, were really good, above-average fights. There's a lot of new Octagon graphics that happened that you saw. Similar to what the NBA does with their floor. They did that with the Octagon. New graphics for the fighters and whatnot. So that was really good stuff. 2 flying knee finishes on the main card. Good stuff there. Bonuses. McGregor and Almeida won performance of the night, while McDonald versus Lawler earned fight of the night. My picks were pretty poor. 4 out of 11. I've been getting some backlash because of it. And I guess I have to explain myself now. I'm going to say this, and feel free to comment and, tell me if I'm wrong or not. I didn't feel that my analysis was that far off sometimes. I picked McDonald versus Robert Lawler. I picked McDonald to win. And I said, hey, I think he made enough technical improvements to get the I think it was a decision win. He was up 3-1. I mean, coming into the last round. There are some things that I overlook. For example, that he has a tendency to sit. McDonald has a tendency to sit back. He's not a shark. He doesn't go for the kill when he needs to. And it showed against like BJ Penn. There are points where, especially in the 4th, where I felt that he was kind of coasting. So that wasn't really good, good for him. I picked Siri over Smolka, and that one was tough for me to pick. I said Siri's just really game. I think I even said he's a better boxer, and it showed. But the problem is, Smolka was a much better grappler than Siri, and his game won out. Some I was just way off. Fisher versus Sedano, I was off. I knew Sedano was pretty bad on the ground. I didn't know he was that bad. I didn't expect Gunnar Nelson to knock down Brandon Thatch. I understand that Bermudez has defense. I say it all the time. Listen to every Bermudez fight. This guy has terrible stand-up defense. And yes, he could get clipped by Stevens, who hits hard. That's a pretty back and forth fight. I don't feel that the analysis is wrong, but the pick ends up wrong. Does that reflect on what I know about the fighters or not? I know some people say, yeah, I don't know what the hell I'm talking about because I can't pick correctly. And for me personally, I see it as, look, I know what the fighters bring to the table. Unfortunately, one game for me, it's like, okay, I know that Robbie Lawler's a good counterpuncher. His stand-up has gotten a lot more technical over time. His takedown defense was impenetrable. I know what he brings. I know their weaknesses, but ultimately, one game is going to win out over the other. And I do feel that analyzing fighters and fights is a lot different than picking fights. Some disagree with me and just say, hey, dude, you can't pick them right? Well, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. Stop doing these shows. Because you don't know what you're saying. I don't know. But anyways, let's just get started. Conor McGregor defeated Chad Mendes by TKO in the 2nd round. A lot of people, Kenny Florian in the post-fight were saying, and this is argumentative too, that Conor McGregor passed the wrestler test. He showed that, he can deal with the wrestler. And that's a really interesting point because the fact of the matter is he was getting taken down a good amount of times. I think he managed to sprawl out of one takedown. And then, when he was put on his back, honestly, he stayed flat on his back for long periods of time. I picked McGregor to win ultimately by KO or TKO, and he did. The reach was a factor, and was not a factor. I'm going to say this with Conor McGregor. I think he can get wins. I think he can get wins over some top guys. I'm kind of favoring him over Jose Aldo at this point. I don't favor him over Frankie Edgar. I think, actually, Frankie Edgar might be a stylistic nightmare for Conor McGregor. But yeah, I found McGregor's game to be, and I hate to use this comparison because there's some things that are different about him. I kind of found him to be, and I'm going to be really critical of him as well as complimentary. I kind of found McGregor to look something like akin to Chuck Liddell here. He was not defending punches. His hands were down, which is fine, but he doesn't have that same takedown defense that Liddell had against wrestlers. And the ability to get back to his feet was more contingent on Mendes going for the high-risk guillotine than anything else. Then, good wherewithal for McGregor to scramble out during that opportunity, but he was not necessarily forcing scrambling opportunities. He just took punches, and it looks like, and I'm actually more concerned, this is something, I know I'm being critical of him, but this is actually something to look out for moving forward with him. He really has forsaken defense. In the stand-up, he used to be a guy that used to move his head and counter. Now he's just a pure pressure fighter that just moves forward, doesn't really move his head, even gets off balance at times throwing that left hand. And he got hit hard a couple times. It's just a testament to his chin that really he just took the punches and kept marching forward. Once again, Chuck Liddell right there. Obviously, it's not a super fair comparison, as I feel that McGregor has much better hands, much better footwork, but just in the sense of he's fighting in a way that does not allow for longevity, and quite honestly, it's something where the chins don't get better. There's a good chance he's gonna get knocked out, not in 2 fights, but maybe 3, 4, 5 fights down the line if he keeps fighting this way. I noticed it too in the Dennis Siver fight. I was like, McGregor's taking a lot more hits than he has any right to be taking. So I'm actually a bit worried for McGregor moving forward. And also another reason why, Jose Aldo might be able to actually win against McGregor. I do feel that Jose actually has a pretty underrated double leg takedown. And he might even be the more precise striker than Mendes. Also, Mendes is really short and has T-Rex arms and was hitting him. Jose Aldo has the kicks to also worry about along with the punches, and he's a much taller and rangier guy. So that's going to be a really interesting fight when McGregor fights Aldo. But I'm kind of wondering if we're getting a bead on Conor McGregor's game at this point. It's against Brandao, Poirier, Siver, and now Mendes. He'll kind of pressure, and ultimately he'll throw the fancy kicks just to kind of throw him out there and keep distance. But the bread and butter, it really is that left hand. It's his money punch right there. He has a good left hook right right hook left cross combo going on. Still his takedown defense. Granted, look who he's fighting, and he fought him in 2 weeks' notice. But it is a cause for concern, the wrestling. So, like I said, I'm a bit worried for McGregor here, actually, moving forward. Just, there's, his fight showed that he's on the level. Because you can't just beat Chad Mendes, take his punches, and march forward, and still knock out Chad Mendes. The only guy who's beaten Chad Mendes is Jose Aldo. 2 weeks notice, and it kind of showed, for sure, But he still beat him. Mendes did what he could do. I think he made a real strategical mistake in trying to go for that guillotine in the second round. I thought that he should have stayed in guard, hit those elbows, because he's doing just enough damage not to get stood up. So, and I think there's a good argument that Mendes was probably up point-wise up until that point. So, Chad Mendes is still a really good fighter, and I'm curious to see how Mendes would do against McGregor with a full training camp. It could be a lot different for both, actually, because obviously McGregor would be training his training camp not for a striker like Aldo, but for a guy like Mendes. So I'm curious. I'm curious to see a rematch between the two. But for now, McGregor was the superior fighter. Man, you can tell he is huge for the weight class too. And that left hand is just money for him. So moving forward, McGregor should obviously they're probably going to go with the Aldo fight. Frankie Edgar came out and he walked up to the octagon and had some words for McGregor. Frankie Edgar's gonna be an opponent for McGregor in the near future. It's either Aldo or Frankie Edgar. I mean, really, there's no one else that's as interesting, that really deserves it. With Mendes is actually beaten a good amount of guys, but I think you can get the loser of Max Holloway versus Charles Oliveira. I think that'd be a really good fight for him. You can also go with Bermudez. That wouldn't be too bad either. Mendes, Bermudez. So there's still good fights for him. He's in a tough spot though. Mendes is. I mean, this guy keeps getting title shots. This is his third title shot, and he's lost it. 2 of them he got knocked out in. So it's not the best look for Mendes. He's a top fighter. He has good fights too, for the most part. At his worst, he'll have bad fights like against Nick Lentz, but otherwise, still good fights, still top fighter. I'd also like to see him fight Frankie Edgar at one point. So good stuff there. Next fight is that Robbie Lawler defeated Rory MacDonald by TKO in the 5th round. One thing that's gonna come off of this loss really is just the mental aspect of the loss for MacDonald. This is, he was up in the scorecards. He almost had Lawler beat, and ultimately he lost in the 5th round. I'm a bit curious moving forward how MacDonald's going to react to this loss. If this is something that's going to really mentally hurt him. Robbie Lawler, man. What can I say? Very precise. Great counter punching too. A lot of times, he's just doing a jab cross, and his jab was working really well against MacDonald. MacDonald's jab in the beginning was working really well too, but man, Lawler's takedown defense was impenetrable in this fight. I kind of thought that MacDonald would get him down at least once, and it did not happen. If Lawler fights Hendricks again, I was actually kind of leaning more towards Hendricks, but I gotta go with Lawler. Something about Lawler, though, in those middle rounds that is a bit concerning, Saw in both Hendricks' fights, especially especially in the first Hendricks fight where he's just getting tagged clean and often, and even flurried upon. But ultimately, the thing with Robbie Lawler too is this guy is just resilient, and he hits hard. He counter punches well. He strikes well. He has a good jab. His takedown defense is really good. But yeah, this was a really fun fight. It started off a little slow. The first round was a feeling out process. Dang, did it get good. It just got better and better until it reached the crescendo, really, of the 5th round, where he broke McDonald's nose. It's actually a cool pic of them in the hospital, of Lawler taking a picture with McDonald where McDonald's in the hospital bed. Just a really great fight. Both of them were really landing their stuff. With McDonald, though, I felt that McDonald made some good technical improvements. He still seems to have a hard time fighting southpaws, but he was also going for that body attack with the kicks. The head kicks were working really well in the 3rd and 4th round. I felt that he there was a point in the 4th round, like at the end of the 3rd, right? He got the flurry and almost almost won the fight. And then at the beginning of the 4th, he also gets him really good. Gets him against the cage, flurries, and then there's like a minute or two where McDonald and Lawler just start circling, and I'm thinking, what are you doing? Like, stay on him, you know? But this is a problem with Rory McDonald, and maybe he was tired, I don't know, because it was like the later rounds. But I even saw it against like BJ Penn, it's like, oh, you had him, he's getting staggered, get after him. And he still just went to decision with him. Yeah, he played around with him. But it's definitely something with McDonald where he seems to be ahead. Even in the Woodley fight, it's like he's ahead. He's kind of having his way with the fighter at some point of the fight, and he kind of just lets him off. Something to look out for with Rory McDonald moving forward, because 25 minutes is a long time to allow to do that. You can let your opponent get back in the fight, as shown here. Otherwise, great fight. Possibly one of the best of the year. One of the best title fights out there. Just great technical fight. Both of them were landing clean shots. Both of them, had each other in trouble at different moments of the fight. Ultimately, Robbie Lawler just broke his nose. Great stuff, though. I think Lawler should get Hendricks or Carlos Condit next. Even the Hendricks fight, I'm not too big on, to be perfectly honest with you. I'd actually just rather see Lawler fight Condit next. And Condit's coming off the big win over Alves. So, and, he's such a fun fighter. So, former interim champ, too. Hendricks is a former champ himself, so it's just a fresh matchup for me. Lawler versus Condit is just all types of violence. That's why I'd like to see it. And they're both super resilient, super good chins. I'd just like to see that fight. Lawler versus Hendricks, though, they tend to have good fights against each other and bring out the best in each other, so it's not the worst option. But just personally, I'd like to see Lawler versus Condit next. With McDonald, he can get like Thiago Alves. Maybe, I don't know when Hector Lombard's coming back, but I think that'd be a cool fight. Because they were supposed to fight before. I think he's off a pretty long layoff. So you can go with guys like maybe Dong Hyun Kim, even though he's coming off a win. I'm just thinking of like fresh challengers for him. McDonald versus Matt Brown would actually be pretty interesting as well. Next fight after that really fun fight here, Jeremy Stephens defeated Dennis Bermudez by TKO as a flying knee, subsequent punches in the 3rd round. Both of these fighters are really reckless. Bermudez more so, and it's something I knew about Bermudez coming in. And I've known about this about Bermudez for a while, but this guy is so reckless. He kind of runs into punches. It's kind of like he kind of lunges in, throws a combination, but he lunges in to the point where he can get countered, and it happens a lot here. And that happened with the flying knee. The flying knee is pretty much off a counter, or like as he's rushing in. Well-timed stuff there from Stevens. And yeah, that's the thing with Bermudez. It just, he's good. He's a bit reckless, but he's really offensive-minded. Had the fight kept going, it would have been a really interesting fight. I don't know who'd win a decision. I'd probably lean, I don't know. I forgot how to round to it. I think it was split like 1-1 apiece. But yeah, this was just a really fun fight. Bermudez would rush in, get some punches. He'd have a hard time taking down Jeremy Stephens, and Jeremy Stephens would also just land punches, sometimes with reckless abandon, on Bermudez. And it was just really good stuff. Really fun. But yeah, moving forward, the problem with Bermudez, with picking him to win, especially at the highest, against top 10 guys, is that his defense is just so bad. And it looks like guys on the higher level can defend his takedowns better. So that's something to think about when Bermudez fights a top 10 guy. Guys below the top 10, I would probably pick Bermudez pretty comfortably. But guys like in the top 10 or higher, I think Stephens is like 8 or 9 or something like that. I don't know. Maybe he got out of the top 10. I kind of forgot. Maybe I should say like top 12 then, because I know Stephens was pretty high up there. Guys that are relatively high up there and that fight at a high level, at a top 10 level. That's what I should say. Fight at a top 10 level can seem seemingly like Lamas is another guy, and even Max Holloway was defending Bermudez's takedowns. Can defend Bermudez's takedowns and find the and work those holes in Bermudez's striking defense to take advantage of. That's something to think about moving forward when predicting his fights. Stephens is who he is, man. This guy's got a great chin. His footwork's a lot better. He still hits really hard. Sometimes will brawl. His takedown defense has greatly improved. His ability to get back to his feet has greatly improved as well. I'd like to see Stephens get Joaquin Diaz next, or Ricardo Lamas would also be a pretty good one. Those are both grappling-based guys, but I just can't think of guys on top that Stephens hasn't already fought that he can fight, because he's lost to Cub Swanson. He also lost to Charles Oliveira. I know Max Holloway's fighting Oliveira. I don't know if they'd fight each other. I know they've trained together before. Maybe they would. That'd be a cool fight too. Holloway versus Stephens. With Bermudez, I think a good next fight for him would probably be like Nick Lentz. I think that'd be pretty interesting style matchup right there. Can't say who else. Maybe Charles Oliveira if he loses to Max Holloway. I think that'd be pretty interesting as well. Next fight, I thought Gunnar Nelson defeated Brandon Thatch by rear naked choke in the first round. I got, a lot of people were telling me why did I pick Brandon Thatch. I picked him because he's the bigger fighter. I thought he'd be able to defend the takedowns and just beat him up on the feet. And the last thing I kind of expected from Gunnar Nelson was to knock down Brandon Thatch. He's just a guy that's not particularly known for punching power. And he's kind of a low output striker, really unexpected there. This was just a pick here. If this was one of my more egregious picks here, I should have gone with Nelson. He's much better on the ground. What I was doubting was his ability to take the fight to the ground. Once Thatch, especially when Thatch got mounted, and then once he gave up his back, it was over. I was just like, oh dude, he's getting a rear naked choke, and he did. Brandon Thatch, I was pretty high on him as a prospect, but This is definitely something that's going to derail him. You know, it's just defensively, he needs a lot of work. Stand-up wise too, apparently. You know, stand-up wise and on the ground. I mean, yeah, he's fighting Nelson, and even before that, he fought Ben Henderson, who are really good at the ground, especially when they take the back. But he's a guy that needs a lot of work. There are some guys that he'll beat, but tricky guys. I know there's guys that are very more tricky, and especially guys that just, how about this? Guys that won't play Thatch's game seemingly are going to beat Thatch. You know, guys that will stand in front of him, allow themselves to get clinched and whatnot, probably get kneed to death by Thatch. Guys are a bit more tricky, because Nelson, he has that karate base, he'll move around a little more and whatnot. He kind of picks his shots more. Well, you know, doesn't necessarily get himself in Thatch's wheelhouse, and in just generally bad positions. That's the thing with Nelson too. He's not, even in this last against like Rick Story, it's not like he got into a lot of particularly bad positions standing or on the ground. He was just getting like outworked against like Rick Story and couldn't get his own game really going. But he wasn't getting in like, there wasn't any point in the fight where I was thinking, oh man, he's going to get finished or he's going to get in a really bad position here. You know, he doesn't really allow himself to. Good one for Nelson. I think he should get the winner of Magny versus Maya or Dong Hyun Kim, who's coming out to win over Berkman next. With Thatch, a good fight again for him. It's getting some guys coming off losses, but are striking-based fighters. Tim Means or Hung Yu Lim versus Brandon Thatch. Both these guys, Thatch, Lim, and Means are like really tall for the weight class and fight a more inside style fighting. So I think those would be really good fights. Really fun fights for Thatch, actually. Any combination of those three guys actually would be pretty cool. Next one, I thought Thomas Almeida defeated Brad Pickett by a flying knee in the second round. Fun fight, and man, you know, Almeida was getting countered by those left hands, dropped to his butt on 2 separate occasions. I think this is the first time that Brad Pickett got knocked out cold. Up until that point, he's gotten rocked, dropped, but not put out. I think did I call Almeida by KOT? I think I did, actually. You know, eventually, I think it was eventually that Pickett, he takes too many clean hits. Eventually, he's going to get knocked out. This was the time. It was by a devastating flying knee. It still goes to show that Almeida, because the thing with Almeida is he's a high volume combination striker. He'll sit in the pocket for a while. I think one thing is that allows him to get susceptible to counter strikes, and the counter left hook was there all day for Brad Pickett. That's something to watch out for moving forward with Almeida. I did like from Almeida his ability to scramble back to his feet. He was always working when he was put on his back, Pickett on top, stiff arm, you know, to the head, hipping out and whatnot, and just scrambling back to his feet. That is something I really like to see out of a striking-based fighter, because that gives some of idea of how he'd do against a guy that'd be trying to take him down. Good performance from Almeida. He did get some scares here. Pickett's a tough guy. You know, he's a guy that would give up-and-coming prospects scares. You know, still needs some work. He's got to watch out for those counter strikes, though. But yeah, good win from Almeida. I'd say give him the winner of Caraway versus Wineland next. If not him, who else? You know, I'm trying to think who's up there. I mean, you could go Prospect versus Prospect and give him like Aljamain Sterling versus Almeida, which wouldn't be too bad. Or like Anthony Burchak versus Almeida, but I think that's kind of a step down. But, you know, he should be fighting, like, more consistent top 10 guys at this point. I know Mizugaki's coming off a loss, but I think that'd be a pretty interesting fight just to test Almeida as well. Mizugaki Almeida would be pretty cool, too. Oh, you know, there's another good fight. I forgot. Francisco Rivera versus Thomas Maeda. And I actually make that fight because both of them are striking-based fighters. And, you know, both are pretty aggressive. They push forward a lot. Hit hard, too. Francisco Rivera hits really hard. So, Francisco Rivera doesn't have the variety that Almeida has. But yeah, I think that'd be a good fight, and it's an appropriate fight too, actually. With Rivera coming off that he knocked out Caceres, and then Almeida is coming off this big win over Pickett. So yeah, make that fight. On the prelims, Matt Brown defeated Tim Means by guillotine in the first round. You know, I would actually say this was an egregious pick on my part. I went for the upset and Tim Means. I don't necessarily regret the pick. I gotta say, there were certain things in this fight that held true. Matt Brown doesn't have the best first rounds. He also isn't the best defensively. I thought that Tim Means would do better defensively in this fight. That's the thing. The problem is he fights in Matt Brown's wheelhouse, so he's going to get hit. The same stuff that Tim Means likes and was effective with, like elbows. Against Brown, Brown is just as good, if not better, than Tim Means. And I think watching the fight, I think that Matt Brown was just a little better at what Tim Means does. Just a little. Especially, like, you know, it seemed like Tim Means couldn't see the punches that Matt Brown was on. And Matt Brown throws some really awkward punches. I felt that Matt Brown was just finding the opening a little better for the knees and elbows than Means at times. Like I said, he was just outdoing Means just a little bit, to the point where, like, he was able to get ultimately able to get the better of Means. I think what started the ending sequence was an elbow. But Tim Means had his moments. You know, definitely had his moments. The problem is, you know, and this was my thing. I thought that Tim Means would be able to match what Matt Brown did, and I thought he'd just be a little better defensively, but that wasn't the case. Matt Brown, definitely a guy I still underestimate, because for all his holes, he's still a very offensive minder and a very tricky fighter. But still a very technical fighter too. Like, he's not a guy that'll just throw. He's very tricky in the clinch. He'll throw a knee when people are expecting the elbows, and elbow when they're expecting knees, or even go for the dump. You know, his punches are very deceptive. They're very long, and I think it seems like opponents can't really gauge just how long Matt Brown's punches are. It's like the Mike Swick fight, and some of his other fights too. You can just kind of see that, where they just get hit clean by his punches. And this fight especially, it just kind of seems like, oh wow, like, oh, he hit me, like, oh, he was way down there, but he still hit me. Definitely underestimated Matt Brown. A lot of people were telling me, oh, why didn't you pick Matt Brown? There's still holes in his game, you know, and it kind of showed here. He's a guy that does get hit clean. He's resilient as hell. He's tough as hell. I pick him sometimes, and I don't pick him when I should. And this is a time when, you know, he's a guy that wins despite the holes in his game. That's the thing. Unless he fights some really top-level guy that doesn't make the mistakes that would allow Brown to capitalize on. Robbie Lawler, Johnny Hendricks, and just guys high. I mean, how high up there, you know, are the guys that Matt Brown's lost to. And that's another thing I totally overlooked was the resume. I kind of threw that out the window, and I was just looking at pure style matchup. And even then, Matt Brown was the better of the two at the styles that these guys fight. So, egregious pick in that sense, because I was just totally overlooking a lot of things from Brown. Moving forward, though, I think there's a very small window of guys that Matt Brown would lose to, and it's guys that are really high up there. I think a Damian Maya would probably beat Matt Brown just because he'd probably just aggressively take him down, even though Maya but he'd still be in danger because Maya likes takedowns from the clinch. You know, he's a guy I can see beat Matt Brown. I think Brown would beat a guy like a Magny. I'd like to see Brown fight Lombard. If Lombard goes for a takedown-based style, maybe he wins. But actually, I'd kind of favor Brown, especially in the later rounds. If it's a 5-round fight, Brown all the way. Brown versus McDonald would be interesting. But yeah, you see, I'd probably ultimately pick McDonald just based upon range striking, and I don't think he'd fight in Matt Brown's wheelhouse at all. I mean, it's just not something he does. He doesn't fight in the clinch. I'd probably pick Brown over Saffiedine at this point. I'd like to actually see Brown fight Saffiedine or Condit next. Condit would be really interesting, though. I said Condit Lawler would be fun. So would Matt Brown Condit. So there's a lot of good fights. I don't actually know who'd win against Condit versus Brown. I think could go either way. Tim Means, at this point, this was a big step up in competition. I thought he acquitted himself relatively well, despite the fact that he lost in the first round. I think he should just fight more lower to mid-tier guys at the division next. Good fighter, all things considered, like I said, I thought he acquitted himself relatively well. Next fight, I thought Alex Garcia defeated Mike Swick by unanimous decision. This is a miserable fight, really. Maybe it's a layoff, but the prospect of Alex Garcia really moving up in the division, in my opinion, gets kind of stalled here. It's just he couldn't really get through the range of Mike Swick, and that was a bit alerting. And he got the takedowns consistently and was able to stay on top. But yeah, I think the taller guys are always going to give Alex Garcia problems. I mean, Alex Garcia at times would whiff this left or right hand and just get stumble. I mean, he just stumble in weird ways because he's just so off balance trying to get this one-hitter quitter. And you see a guy like a Magny who's really tall who beat Alex Garcia. So that's, moving forward with Garcia, something to watch out for. The taller, rangier guys tend to do well. And Mike Swick did pretty well at range against Garcia. Ultimately, he get hit a couple times, but it was ultimately the wrestling and the takedowns that did Swick in. Cardio-wise for Garcia, too, just does not have the best cardio, doesn't have the best output. There's a lot to like with Garcia because he is pretty athletic. He wrestles very well. He can strike, but there's a lot of holes in his game that that other fighters and his better fighters will probably take advantage of. Garcia just should fight more like mid-level guys at this point, and just hopefully just get better and better. Hopefully he'll reach that point where I just found this fight to be a bit underwhelming for Garcia, to be perfectly honest with you. Swick, I mean, he's a name, and at this point, that's all he is. You know, he's can't defend against the takedowns of the younger fighter. He can strike with him pretty well, but I still question his chin. If he stays in the UFC, you know, he didn't get finished. I thought he would. So that's good. But, you know, if he keeps fighting, I don't know why he's fighting at welterweight too. The guy looks so emaciated. The guy should fight at middleweight. I mean, he looks so drawn out. You know, I mean, just on a physical appearance level, it's like he looks like a POW or something. I don't know how to describe it. He just looks really bad, physically. If he does fight, I'd like to see him fight at middleweight, and I think he can actually get wins there. Next fight, I thought John Howard defeated Cathal Pendred by split decision. Now, that is pretty much why I picked Cathal Pendred to win, and he didn't win, and I'm so happy he didn't win, actually. Cathal Pendred, had he won, would be on like a 5-fight win streak in the welterweight division. I pick him to win simply because there's something about his style that affects judges. I mean, for all intents and purposes, John Howard should have won a 29-28, if not a 30-27. I mean, it was pretty clear. I don't understand it. And this is why I picked Pendred. And this is why I put him down all the time. He's not a great fighter. I mean, he's just not a great fighter. But he managed what it is on a technical level. The guy is terrible. Even at his best, his strength is a clinch. He's not that good there. The only thing he does is he uses his size to lean against fighters against a cage. He's not a great wrestler. He's not a great takedown artist. Doesn't have an explosive shot. Striking is slow. You know, he's tough as nails. That's the other thing with him too. And he somehow manages to work a certain type of offense that judges seem to like. Because this fight was a lot closer than it had any right to be in the judges' scorecard. Competitively, John Howard probably should have worked a little more volume, but ultimately he got the win that he deserved. He avoided there's sometimes that he'd invite the clinch, would break the clinch pretty easily, and defend takedowns pretty easily, and ultimately outstrike Pendred. That's really the essence of Pendred. If he can defend his takedowns, avoid the clinch, and it's not that hard to do against him. You can win the fight, especially if you fight him at range. That's the thing. The problem is, it seems like judges tend to like Pendred's offense. To the point where he's pretty much like a Leonard Garcia, Diego Sanchez type, where for some reason they just like his offense enough that he gets narrow split decisions, even in fights that he should clearly have lost. Sean Spencer fight is another example. You know, it's like he should have lost that fight. This fight should not have gone to, you know, it's fine that it went to decision, but it should not have been a split. It was not that close. John Howard lives to fight in the octagon another day, and he also managed to beat stop the win streak of Cathal Pendred. I say that only because I don't feel that Pendred deserved to have that win streak. Not just the Sean Spencer fight. I thought he lost against was it Umalatov, right? I thought he lost that fight too, you know. And there are other fights of his. You know, even the Mike King fight was really close. I think Cathal Pendred should fight at middleweight. Guy's huge for a weight class, but he's also slow for a welterweight. At least at middleweight, I think he'd actually be more competitive there. John Howard is who he is. He's a good fighter. You know, he'll get wins over like Pendred, Hall, Uriah Hall, and whatnot. But then he'll also lose a couple to lower mid-level guys too. He's just a guy that can hang on in the UFC, test fighters out, you know, still dangerous enough that you have to respect him. Howard should just fight more lower level guys at the UFC. Pendred, same thing. With Pendred, he should probably move up to middleweight. I mean, he's not like this great prospect or anything like that. Hate to be so critical of the guy. It's just, it is what it is. He's a guy that on a technical level shouldn't even really compete on the UFC level, but manages to get wins. And yeah, managed to get wins, and also very close decisions too. Next one, I thought Cody Garbrandt defeated Henry Briones by unanimous decision. I was actually expecting a little more from Garbrandt here. I was expecting him to style on Briones and knock him out. I'm still high on him as a prospect. There was a lot to like here. There's some takedowns on hand on Briones that were pretty seamless. He just strike, all of a sudden, like, Briones like clinch or something, and Garbrandt just like took him down with ease. Managed to knock him down in the second round with an uppercut. Credit to Briones' toughness and maybe just underestimating him for doing as well as he did against Garbrandt. But ultimately, Garbrandt's a blue chip prospect. Trains out of Team Alpha Male. He can brawl a little too much to my liking. I think that's one problem with Garbrandt. And that's pretty much one of the biggest things about Garbrandt at this point. But he's only like, 7-0, I still feel he's a blue chip prospect. He should just fight more mid-level guys. He's just a guy that needs more octagon time and whatnot. And with Briones, just more lower to mid-tier guys in the division. I did feel that he acquitted himself well enough that he's not a guy though. If he fights like mid and lower level guys, he could probably get wins and probably do enough to stay into the UFC. Okay, on to Fight Pass prelims. Luis Smolka defeated Neil Siri by unanimous decision. This is something with Luis Smolka that I noticed in the Richie Bachalik fight. He's a guy that isn't the best boxer, and guys seemingly can outbox Smolka. He does have some pretty nice kicks, but for the most part, he's a guy, I guess, that isn't the best in boxing range. He's a really good and slick grappler too. He does leave his neck out there to get guillotined, which is a bit concerning. But otherwise, good win here. I picked Siri here, and I said it before. It's like, this guy will fight. Whatever position he's in, he's always fighting. He's just one of the most game opponents. Watch out for Neil Siri fight. He has fun fights. The one against Brad Pickett was fun. His fight against Chris Beal was fun. He's just a guy that'll have some really fun fights. You'll usually see him on the prelims, but usually he'll have an entertaining fight because he's just so game. He'll push forward. He'll box. Yeah, he can get taken down, but he'll always fight even if he's on his back. Ultimately, though, Smolka was the much better grappler. He can get dominant positions on Siri as well. Take his back numerous times. Smolka is a good prospect. I wouldn't say he's like a blue chip prospect by any means, but good prospect nonetheless. Solid fighter. Both these guys more lower to mid tier guys at the division. And finally, Cody Fisher defeated Yosdeni Cedeno by unanimous decision. Man, I knew that Cedeno was bad on the ground. I kind of thought that he'd have much better takedown defense too. His takedown defense is like non-existent. I don't know if he's going to stay in the UFC. He just does not have the grappling to compete at this level. He just doesn't. He got out-grappled by Ernest Chavez. And he'll get... His opponents get dominant positions on him too. Like side mount and whatnot. He fought Chad Lepre. Chad Lepre was able to take his back. And now Cody Pfister was able to take him down consistently. And even get a couple down. I think he got like side mount on him at one point. Definitely underestimated Cedeno here. Or overestimated Cedeno while greatly underestimating Pfister. Because the way Pfister would win was by taking him down and keeping him there. And that's what he, was able to do. Wait, didn't Pfister take his back too? Yeah, I think he did. So, yeah, Cedeno should probably get, I just don't think he can fight at the UFC level at this point. Pfister, he's game. That's really all I can really give him at this point. Is that he's a guy that will relentlessly go for the takedown. Striking's not the greatest, though. But, he's there. He did well enough against James Montazeri, all things considered. Beat Yosdeni Cedeno. It's more lower level guys in the division for him. So, yeah, good card. He even had Sinead O'Connor, and I believe it was Aaron Lewis doing they sang the walkouts live for Mendes and McGregor. So that was pretty cool. So it looks like the UFC is really fixing their production stuff. You got to see the Reebok gear and the kits. They all look the same. I'm not a big fan of them, just because there's not a lot of variety to them. But otherwise, really fun main card. And once Brown versus Mean started, it was all up and up from there. Great stuff. Really fun card. I'll be back to do my post-fight analysis for the Ultimate Fighter 21 finale. And for the Mir, I'll do my predictions for the Mir versus Duffy card, along with the Bellator card that's coming up too. So that's it for MMA for you. Thank you guys very much.